when you practice your daily practices, all that you've learned, or do you lean more towards one side? How do your daily practices of staying anchored, being happy, joyful, peaceful? What would that include, really?
Yeah. I think I've learned from my own Catholic tradition and from many Hindu tradition. Happiness, it sounds trivial to say, but in a sense is a state of mind and heart, that you don't need amount of material goods, or you don't need a certain success, you don't need popularity and so on, but a certain kind of grounding, contentment, wisdom about life as it changes, realization that some of my needs are important, other needs are not that important, can lead you to being a very happy person. I'm an older person now, and I think as you get older, you can look back on your life and be grateful for many things and say, I'm blessed in so many ways, and so many good things have happened in my life that I can't complain about.
Good morning, good evening. Welcome, everybody, to all my listeners. Thank you once again for being here with me today. I have with me a very special guest today, someone who is very unique in his profession and his knowledge. Actually, his expertise spans continents, and that's what makes him so unique. Professor Francis X. Clooney, SJ, he is a professor at the Harvard Divinity School since 2005. After earning his doctorate in South Asian languages and civilization from the University of Chicago, he taught at Boston College 21 years before coming to Harvard. From 2010 to 17, he has been the director of the Center for the Study of World Religions at Harvard, an expert on Hindu traditions for the last 50 years, and a Jesuit priest. He is a Roman Catholic and a member of the Society of Jesus for 55 years. He served regularly in a Catholic parish on weekends, and he continues to write regularly. He has authored numerous articles and books, including Thinking Ritually, Theology After Vedanta. So I'm going to dive straight into, my question on, as an expert on religion, what is, in your view, is the difference between spirituality and religion, or what are the commonalities? How do the two come together for you?
So, Ashu, again, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here for this broadcast, this recording today. And I think those terms, spirituality and religion, can be used in various ways, and individuals may have strong opinions about what the difference is. In my own way of looking at them over the years and out of my studies and personal life, I would say that religion tends to be mostly about the community aspect, the shared belief, the shared tradition, the structures, the temple, the church, the synagogue, and so on like that. So it's not merely external, but it's sort of the context and community of a faith. And that spirituality, particularly in the United States today, where young people often say that I'm spiritual but not religious, spirituality is used to refer to the inner experience, the personal apprehension, the desires, the meaning that a person finds in their own life. And ideally, I think that religion and spirituality go together very well. That to be a spiritual person naturally is a communal act where it opens up into community. And if you are in a religious, a church, temple, whatever, if spirituality is lacking, it would be a very bad religion. So hopefully they go together, but internal spiritual and external to some extent the religious.
But if religion is lacking, do you think it really impacts the, how spiritually a person lives?
Well, I think it would depend on the context, of course. Everything depends on the context. But I would think that what's happening, again, in the United States, and I was in India this summer, but I'm not expert on what's happening in Indian society today. In the United States, the tendency to spirituality without religion turns out to privatize people's faith, and that individuals lose their social impact, cultural impact, and the values of their traditions tend to be made peripheral or marginal because it's many individuals, each one doing their own thing, and not the impact of saying we as a community, we as a religious tradition say the following. So for justice for workers, for racial equality, for environmental issues, if you get 1,000 individuals, each one raising their own hand and saying, I'm against this, I'm for that, that has less effect than saying we, the people of this community, of this religion, want to affirm this together. So I think, well, it's important to have very spiritual individuals in society. Society works by communal effort as well. And if there are no religions, then the government or other groups can dominate, and people of faith can be silenced or marginalized.
So it's a great way to bring community together and for the good of the society. So that is, thank you for that perspective, because that's the question that often lurks, is, I'm confronted with. As someone deeply rooted in Christianity and Hinduism, how do you see the conversions of these religions in fostering a universal understanding of, spiritual philosophy, living, happiness, peace, love, especially in these very turbulent times where there's so much conflict and unrest in certain parts of the world?
So I think the larger scene is that people of faith traditions and people who are good but not of faith traditions all need to work together because we have common problems facing all of us. We needn't go into the list, but war and violence and environmental crises and poverty, immigrants without homes and so on. All of these things pertain to all of us as human beings, and therefore working together matters. And in any instance where you have Jews and Muslims working together, Christians and Buddhists working together, and so on, all these different combinations are all valuable, and I think they all have to be enhanced. My personal experience of as you mentioned, the past 50 years, I first went to India and then Nepal, Kathmandu in 1973 summer. So it's been over 50 years now since I first came to South Asia, is that I've always found a kind of commonality and harmony between Hinduism and Roman Catholicism. So I'm a Catholic Christian. There are many other Christian churches, of course. But when I was teaching school in Kathmandu from 1973 to 1975, all the boys I taught were Hindu and Buddhist, the Newar Buddhist of the valley and so on like that. But I was immediately attracted, while respecting Buddhism, attracted to the Hindu side and to the Hindu temples like the Pashupati temple and other great temples in Kathmandu Valley, Dakshin Kali, the Kali temple right outside the valley. That in terms of the feel for the religious tradition, Catholicism has a full kind of visual, sensual experience of religion, things you see, things you hear, things you taste and touch, lamps and flowers and incense and so on, statues of saints, and that this resonates well with the beautiful scenes you see often in Hindu temples, where there's similar sensate experiences. And then both traditions also have a long tradition of philosophical texts, theological texts, mysticism, popular religion, pilgrimages, all of these things. And for many, even if not all people of Hindu traditions, focusing on a personal deity, that there is a supreme god or goddess to whom all come eventually. And this resonates well, even if Christian views would have a very strong view of who Jesus Christ is as Lord. Nonetheless, the sense that there's a personal loving God at the center also can be shared by so many Hindus and so many Christians, especially Catholics, I think.
No, absolutely agree. In fact, I believe that, each religion emerged at a point in time and a place when it was relevant and important. And often the traditions and the rituals and all these practices sometimes get diluted or interpreted differently, or they may just become less relevant with passage of time. So it's not as if the religion becomes bad, it's just that some practice may not be as pertinent now.
And we see that traditions are changing all the time. So some people in the West still have this idea that India is an unchanging mystical reality. And that's meant sometimes as a compliment, but as you know far better than I, India is, one of the world's largest economies, one of the world's largest population, changing all the time, bustle and hustle everywhere, and that it's not simply an unchanging tradition. And this is good, that traditions, East and West, North and South, change over time. As you say so well, some things are forgotten and put aside, other things come up to meet a new situation, new saints, new teachers, new leaders, new movements. And this is all very important. So we have to know not only the present moment, but also have a sense of learning from history. And the history, again, tells us where traditions are coming from and what, where they're going and how they are adjusting. We're all trying to adjust to the 21st century, which is a great challenge for all of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, you've mentioned a lot of commonalities, in the two religions, Roman Catholic and Hinduism.
Hmm.
Uh, did you ever, when you started getting attracted to it, so now obviously 50 years is a different long time, but looking back, did you experience any conflict in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think I was right from the start, always running into things that were very different from my own tradition. So I mentioned, Pashupati Temple in Kathmandu, the great Shiva temple, and seeing, the cult of Shiva at that temple, or going out to Buddha Nilkanta, the great Vishnu shrine, out, further, a little bit further outside the center of the city, or going to Dakshin Kali. That would be a good example. So going out, I remember it was like maybe October 1973, I was taken out to Dakshin Kali on a Tuesday morning when there was animal sacrifice to the goddess. And for me, as a Roman Catholic from New York City, this was quite extraordinary. This had no bearing. Christianity doesn't have goddesses. The Virgin Mary is very important, but we don't have goddess traditions, and we don't have animal sacrifice. Unfortunately, most Christians eat meat, but nonetheless, killing animals for religious reasons is simply unheard of. So this was, in some sense, a great challenge to my upbringing, my aesthetic feeling as a Christian, and so on, to imagine what is all of this about. But I think I was the kind of person who was, I think it's a gift grounded enough in my own faith. I didn't go to Kathmandu looking to find a new religion. I wasn't a seeker in that sense. So with a fairly firm sense of Catholic identity, I was able to encounter what is new and what is different and say, even if I can't fit this into my faith now, I don't have to reject it. I don't have to be afraid of it. I don't have to attack it. And certain things are simply different. It frightened me. A different kind of difference would be a belief in rebirth, reincarnation, which is a subtle doctrine. It can be understood in different ways, more literally, more philosophically, and that doesn't fit the Christian view of the world, because we believe that we're created at a certain point without a previous life. We live our lives, and then we have eternal life after death. So we don't disappear, but we have eternal life. The idea that we're reborn again and again doesn't fit the Christian view of the world. And my predecessors, Jesuit missionaries, over the past 400 years, back to the 16th century, even the 16th century, have felt it obliged on them to critique and argue against reincarnation, saying this is not a logical doctrine, there's no proof for it, people shouldn't believe this, and so on. My view is that, again, the difference is real and the difference is obvious. And it's probably the case that the vast majority of Christians are not going to ever believe in reincarnation. But I think my view is that it's not my job to attack it or refute the idea, and that maybe I'll learn something from it. So this sense of the continuity of life, long before me and long after me, that I don't have a simple beginning and simple end, is something I can learn from. And the idea that our deeds affect us, and we are the product of things that have happened to us over over a very long time, I think is wisdom. And to think of our families, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, all the way back, is somehow part of who we are isn't the same necessarily as rebirth or reincarnation, but it opens up this wider perspective. And when I talk to Hindus who have a sense of this longer background and longer past, I learn and benefit from it. Even if at the end of the day, I still can't say, well, Christians can believe in reincarnation.
You're open to embracing new perspectives that may challenge your beliefs completely
Mm,
and challenge the beliefs of your religion, which often can create a lot of conflict for people in their heart and in their mind, and maybe can narrow them. So it's very, how has this helped you in, like when you practice your daily practices, do you bring in a blend of your religion, of all that you've learned, or do you lean more towards one side? How do your daily practices of staying anchored, being happy, joyful, peaceful, what would that
mm.
include really?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've learned from my own Catholic tradition and from many Hindu tradition. Happiness, it sounds trivial to say, but in a sense is a state of mind and heart, that you don't need amount of material goods, or you don't need a certain success, you don't need popularity and so on, but a certain kind of grounding, contentment, wisdom about life as it changes, realization that some of my needs are important, other needs are not that important, can lead you to being a very happy person. I'm an older person now, and I think as you get older, you can look back on your life and be grateful for many things and say, I'm blessed in so many ways, and so many good things have happened in my life that I can't complain about. Even if I should get sick tomorrow and have some disease or something, I would still be grateful. So I think the general thing is this sense of simplicity, being content with what you have, being grateful. But my own Catholic faith, I think, gives me grounding. But the Hindu influence is everywhere in my life. I mean, I teach courses that cross over. So I'm now just finishing a course called Introduction to the Upanishads and the wisdom of those beautiful texts. Did a comparative course called Krishna and Christ, looking at the Krishna tradition and the tradition of Jesus Christ, arguing that we can see differences but learn from both. And I have reminders around me. I mean, so many of the books on my shelves are books either in Sanskrit or Tamil, or books about Indian philosophy, Indian devotionalism. And you can see on the wall behind me there is a large picture of Ramanuja, Sri Ramanuja, the great Vishishtadvaita Vedanta thinker from about 1,000 years ago, who was both a wonderful devotional Vedantin who brought some of the sentiments of the Tamil tradition of the Alvars to bear on the great tradition of Vedanta, but a person also who seemed to stand for an inclusive community. And there are different swamis today who will say that he's actually an ideal person to think about, because his idea of Hinduism was inclusive, that all people who have devotion are welcome into our sampradaya, or people are welcome in. So having him on the wall of my office, and statues of Krishna or Rama or Hanuman and others on my shelves remind me of the diversity and the plurality around me that enhances my faith. The fact that I have been able to learn from both traditions over half a century, I think has taught me that being absolutely committed to my own tradition doesn't mean that the other traditions are evil, or that there's nothing to be learned from them. And I focus on Hindu traditions, but I would say the same about Islam or Buddhism or Judaism or other native traditions, that learning from all of them makes me a better Catholic.
I could, Frank, you have so much to share. I find myself compelled or to just keep going on listening to you.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you. You're very kind.
when you get students in your class, I think my question really is, what are they really seeking? Are they looking to just learn about different religions? Are they looking for meaning in life? What has been your experience over 50 years as an educator?
the nature of Harvard Divinity School now is that it's an open community, welcoming students of any religious background or none. And so on any given day, you can walk into the divinity school and I'll pass Roman Catholic students, Protestant Christian students, Jewish student, there's a Muslim student, there's a Hindu Swami in his robes, there's a Buddhist nun from Taiwan. So many different traditions are flowing together. But what is in common, and I do have some students from the college, but if I just talk about the Div School, people who come to Harvard Divinity School are not necessarily, becoming pastors or priests, but they're at least interested in learning about religion deeply and learning about more than one religion. And I think many of them, to go back to where we were earlier, are also wondering about what does this mean for my life? And so the idea that I need to learn about religions, I need to read the great texts and so on, but I also need to have a spirituality that fits the modern world. And so some of them are looking both outside the classroom, but also in. So here's, we're learning this, we're learning that, but what does it mean for my life? How will this make me a better person? So I mentioned I'm teaching Introduction to the Upanishads. And when you actually read the Upanishads, from the Katha Upanishad to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and so many others, there's so many claims made in them about transformation of life, realization of the self, letting go of all things in order to be perfectly happy in realization. And students are sometimes asking, can I do that today, or is that only 2,000-3,000 years ago? And I think, being in a university context, we can't just give lip service to the eternal truth, but say, do you see what they were trying to say about the meaning of life back then? It can be applied today too. And similarly, if I have a gospel passage or something from the Hebrew Bible, sure, it had a great meaning back then, but we need to be able to think and adjust and ask new questions now to make it mean something.
Given the kind of, like we talked about earlier, you touched upon the various social and other problems that are global, whether it's climate change or poverty or unemployment or conflicts, religious and otherwise. There's always something going on in some corner of the world. In such an environment, and technology has only it's contributed it in both ways, where we can do a lot, but we also know too much. So in such an environment, how do you recommend for the youth of today, or the younger leaders, as the aspiring leaders, to maintain a sense of balance in their life? Something that you've really cultivated very beautifully and brought together very well, seamlessly.
I mean, sometimes that is in my mind as a question to young people. How are you going to do it? Because the world is so, I'm not a century old or anything, but I mean, when I was a student in the late 60s, early 70s in college, the world was so different. I mean, communication was so different. We read newspapers. We didn't have computers. We didn't have iPhones or any of that. And media was so much slower. Travel was so much slower. Everything was different. And people were reading books, and now people are reading things online all the time. I think the world has indeed speeded up so much, and that it would be foolhardy for somebody like me at my age to be telling young people this is what you got to do. But I do think that you're pointing to something very basic, is that we're always being overwhelmed by the world around us, and we're always being pulled in different directions, as I was 50 years ago, and as young people are all the more today. But in the midst of that, some kind of sense of humility, I can't do it all, some kind of sense of self-confidence that I'm okay, and that even if I can't do it all, I'm not to blame, but I'm doing my best. And then some kind of sense that, I mean, to put it in the most general terms, there's a higher power. There's a spiritual force at work in the world, which means that evil will not overcome and darkness will not blot out the light. And that even if we find ourselves, you could look at today's newspapers, in situations of terrible violence or terrible injustice, nonetheless, we should not be afraid of the world in which we live, that there are greater things at stake around us. So humility, self-awareness, patience, belief in the spiritual, and some sense that, even in our daily lives, the good always outweighs the bad. And if we slow down enough to pay attention to the people around us, almost always we're surrounded by very good people who are trying very hard to live good lives. And if we realize that and communicate or build community, build friendships, then we're not alone in this struggle. And even if in our fragmented societies, young people can feel isolated, alienated, alone, there's always the possibility of community, spiritual, religious, just human community to help people get through. And as you, I'm sure as you and I would both agree, you also take it day by day, and you try to just keep going. And sometimes things are not going well, and other times they're marvelous, like the changes in the weather. But to be patient as things change, with a hope, things will always be better ultimately in the long run.
So faith, keeping faith in life and faith in the higher power and going
Yeah,
with it.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
No, very well said. Thank you. Thank you so very much for sharing your experiences, your lessons, your learnings, your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it, and
Thank you, Ashu. Happy to be with you.
grateful for the fact that you joined us today. So thank you again.
Thank you.